cuss words, weird shapes, and a hateful job. These are the 10 weirdest kids' test answers. Number 10, shapes. Tests are hard, not just for kids, but even for adults. No kid looks forward to having to answer questions that you could probably fail. Let's be honest, math tests are the absolute worst. Imagine racking your brain just so you can have the right number. Whether it's calculus or geometry, it's just as difficult. Man, I don't miss sitting for these really difficult tests. That's why no one can blame this kid for his answers here. The teacher asked the kids to name a couple of shapes, and this was what he had to write. Either this kid forgot their names and got really creative, or the question really was confusing. At least that explains why there's a square named Bob. Creative or just plain weird? Number 9, perfect rhymes. Nobody loves it when kids use bad words. A lot of times you'll hear your parents say, "Hey, language," when you say something you shouldn't. It turns out some kids get very creative when they absolutely have to say something bad. This kid's teacher asked the class to write down rhymes. That's pretty easy, isn't it? The teacher even picked an easy word, truck. This kid's smart. He wrote down luck, duck, muck, and even yuck. But he thought of one he knew he shouldn't use, so he wrote the F word. In a weird way, that's pretty smart. What do you think the teacher did when they saw that? If I were the teacher, I'd give him a really good grade. I mean, he didn't really say the bad word, did he? Number 8, principal? Hell no. When you're a kid, you can choose to be anything you want to be when you grow up. What's your dream job? At one point in my life, I wanted to be a pirate because of the eye patch. Plus, it'd give me a super cool boat. Some kids may not know what they want to be, but most of these kids know what they don't want to be. In a test, this teacher asked their students, "What would you do if you became the principal?" Now I'm throwing it open to everyone. What would you do as the principal of your school? I'd make detention illegal and ban ugly uniforms. Maybe even get them to serve pancakes for lunch in the cafeteria. Everybody loves pancakes. Then maybe I'll make kids come to school only 3 times a week. Wouldn't that be awesome? Well, this kid was not having any of those ideas. To the teacher's question, the kid replied, "Quit and get a job I'd enjoy." Ouch! If your parent's a principal, you might want to go give him a hug. But at least this kid was honest. There's no point doing a job you don't enjoy. You'd probably end up cranky and mean to everyone. If you think that's weird, now we're gonna take a look at toys that were once alive. A tough kid and a brutally honest answer. Number 7, toys. Kids really do think the weirdest things. This teacher probably was wondering how to tell this kid's parent that something is going on with this kid. It even looks like from the remark she made on the answer. The question in the test was to name one thing that used to be alive. Honestly, I'm not even sure how I would answer that. Maybe dinosaurs. What about you? What would you say? Certainly not what this kid said. This kid said toys used to be alive. I guess this is what really happens when Toy Story is your favorite animated movie. Woody and the gang really did their best to convince kids of all ages that their toys are alive. But if you think about it, this kid thought toys used to be alive. So that means he thinks toys are dead animals or figures. That's a tiny bit creepy, don't you think? The teacher even had to ask if the student was sure about that one. I see a parents-teacher meeting in that kid's future. Number 6, tough kid. My favorite kind of test question is the kind that allows you to answer any way you like. Most times these questions want kids to be as creative as possible. For example, fill in the solutions to the problem. The problem is usually something that doesn't have a specific solution, so you get to put whatever you think. This one kid really showed off with their answer. The teacher asked the students what they would do if they tripped and got injured in the playground. I'd probably run away crying and ask for a nurse, or just sit quietly in the corner. This particular student would not want to do any of that. Instead, the kid said, "Stand up and deal with it." That is one tough kid. What's a little injury to a little badass after all? I'm pretty sure this kid never cried as a baby. But is that even possible? Anyway, I'm convinced that this kid will grow up to be really strong, and there's nothing wrong with that. What would you do if you tripped and fell on a playground? I hope this kid's parents teach them that sometimes it's okay to cry, especially when you're hurt. Number 5, brutal honesty. A lot of kids have different opinions on what old age will look like. Some kids think old age starts at 30. Some don't even ever want to get old. Hate to break it to you, but it's inevitable. To celebrate the 100th day of school, one teacher asked the kids what they would like to do when they're 100 years old. I'm sure there were a lot of hilarious answers, but this kid just went straight to the point. From the answer, you can tell what kind of adult Emma will be. Probably a grumpy grandparent who likes to be alone all the time. They'd also be tired of everything and everyone. They'll tell everyone they're going to Canada and somehow end up in the Bahamas. They'll live in a large house with nothing but a dog and maybe a few cats. They'll get to order whatever they want for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You gotta admit, it sounds like a perfect life. I think I'm even jealous I don't think about that first. Wouldn't you like to be away from people? I think I'd still want to be with my friends. Number 4, anti-construction. In a world where pollution is destroying our lands, some kids are doing their best to protect the environment. But unfortunately, when you're a kid, there's really nothing much you can do to help. In this test, the teacher asked all their students how they would protect the natural resources if they were to build a house in a picture they were shown. I'm sure the teacher just wanted the answer they had taught the kids. But this one kid had something else to say. He writes, "You can just forget about the house." This kid isn't really wrong. He might fail the test, but at least he'll win in real life, perhaps turn out to be the next Greta Thunberg. Also, I'm pretty sure the teacher laughed at the answer. That land really is too pretty to build a house. You have to cut down all those trees and ruin it. It should be a crime to ruin pretty places just to build houses. The question then is, where will the rest of us live? I guess the caveman had it right, living in the wild. I think this kid will go on to become an environmental rights activist. You know, one of those people who protect endangered animals and trees and stuff. That's not a bad idea, right? Starting now, things get serious. It's now time to look at a kid with ugly parents, one who doesn't like to share, and a very risky answer. Number 3, adopted? Do you ever feel like you're not related to your family? Most times we feel this way after we've been scolded for an offense. But most kids know that it's a horrible thing to say to one's family, but this one kid had no such filters. The question in this test asked, what physical characteristics do you share with someone in your family? What personality characteristics too? This kid could have said that they're kind of like their mom or something. Nope. The kid said, I pray I'm adopted, so I don't have to share any physical characteristics with these people. It's a little late for that kid. Unless you're really adopted, you already share a ton of physical characteristics with them. If you think about it properly, you realize this kid called his entire family ugly. That's mean. He really doesn't like the way they look. Hopefully he looks better than all of them when he grows up. Who would you want to look like in your family when you grow up? Number 2, mom dilemma. Don't you just hate it when your friend uses your stuff without telling you? Well, you shouldn't. You should always learn to share. Sharing is a good habit to learn, but this kid was tired of sharing one very important thing. The teacher asked, what belongs to you but is used by your friends more than you? I'm sure this teacher was expecting something like a football or phone or something else, but this kid wrote, your mama. That's hilarious and pretty correct. Your mom is always nicer to your friends when they come around visiting. That's probably why you like going to your friend's house more. Their mom is always nicer to you. Well, you can't change that. Now the moment you've all been waiting for. Number 1, perfect risk. What's the riskiest thing you've ever done in school? I heard of someone who once snuck out to go get lunch outside school. That's probably the least risky thing they've ever done, and it could have been for a good cause. School lunch sucks, but this doesn't give you a right to sneak out during school hours. Well, this smart kid decided to be creative with risk-taking. A teacher asked the students to give an example of a risk. I'd probably have said crossing the street without looking both ways, or maybe driving a car without a license. This kid just says, no. And if you think about it, that's a perfect risk. They're risking their entire education with that really silly answer. Thankfully, the teacher was impressed and gave them a great score. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon.